412. We are part of the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. I am Tyler, and with me as always is Smitty. Go follow us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you're going to find us, wherever you're listening to this. Go follow us, our channel. We have our own individual channels there. And then go to GoFundMe.com or our pinned tweet on our Twitter, and you'll see our mission for Rocking Around the 412, our Christmas fundraiser for everybody to check out and donate to. So that's the announcements. Got those out of the way.
Man, that was in less than a minute, too. That was pretty impressive. Why is it that, as we're recording this show, we always have to, break the fourth wall? O'Neal Cruz just hit a 3-run homer to tie this game, and it's like every time that we're recording, somebody hits a home run. Every time. As we're recording. But we are going to talk.
They hit home runs.
Exactly. Maybe we should just always be recording. Pirates fans are going to be like, can you guys just record 24/7? Or at least the duration of every Pirate game.
Right.
But let's start out actually talking about the Penguins first, because really only one thing to talk about. Danton Heinen comes back to the team, something that I think that we thought wasn't going to happen with where the team was salary cap wise, what it seemed like he was looking for on the open market. But he comes back for $1 million, actually takes a $100,000 pay cut from last year. And, this is the definition of not like this guy was born here, drafted here, played his whole career here, but a hometown discount really for the Penguins. And it's kind of unfathomable to me that a $1 million signing could make me feel so much better about the team, but it really does. That's that middle six wing that we were talking about. That shores up that middle six, and it's a guy that can jump in to that top six when inevitably Jason Zucker isn't able to play 82 games.
Yeah, you're not going to have to replace as many goals. It's just unfathomable to me as to why Danton Heinen took a $100,000 pay cut, but then you add on $2.2 million to that, and Kasperi Kapanen stayed the same on his pay.
I'm just going to pretend those contracts are flipped. Yeah.
Honestly, can anybody make sense of that to me? But yeah, I mean, I'm happy that he's back. We talked about last week on the show that the Penguins' big issue going forward was getting wingers for that middle six. This definitely helps in that. I still think they could add somebody if they wanted to, but the problem is the cap. I just don't think they have that unless they're moving some salary out, which, I mean, maybe they still move a defenseman. We don't know. But yeah, as far as replacing goals go, you're not going to have to replace Danton Heinen's goals because he's going to be back. And I think he fits in great on that third line, especially, but when he needs to and goes up to that second line, I think he works just as well up there. And so I think this was great and really unexpected and it was also the day after we recorded. Also, per usual, things that happen, the Pirates hit home runs, and the Penguins announce things the day after we record.
Yeah. You mentioned, though, the goal scoring. I think that's kind of an underrated thing here. 15 goals last year at even strength, which was tied for second with Sidney Crosby on the Penguins. So, and that's playing the least amount of time per game amongst the forwards. I mean, if you're talking about, we expect that this guy will have an elevated role this year because there's not nearly as much depth to the forward group. But I mean, this is a guy that drove play. I think was a little bit better defensively than people want to give him credit for. And again, can score at 5v5. Be curious to see if he gets some power play time next year. Maybe, second unit I'm talking at this point. But hey, call up Evan Rodriguez and see what he's looking for at this point. Just to pretty much run it back with a forward group, because again, people aren't going to want to hear it because running it back with the same team, but that group was good enough to beat a team that went to the Eastern Conference Final in the New York Rangers if they got adequate play in net. I wouldn't really have an issue with Evan Rodriguez coming back.
Yeah, and if this shows anything about the NHL market as a whole, it's not a good one right now. I mean, even John Klingberg, the guy that we thought we were was going to sign for a 7-year contract by $8 million, 1 year, $7 million in Anaheim. I mean, that's good work by their front office, but it is amazing to me that the contracts are not being handed out like we thought they were going to be. Nazem Kadri still hasn't signed anywhere. It's not pretty on the free agent front.
No, it is not. Switching gears, though, trade deadline just passed real quick for the Pirates. Just a couple of moves. I mean, when they traded Daniel Vogelbach, we thought that could be the first of a few. Really only one other trade to talk about. They did acquire a pitcher from the Blue Jays. Not much of note to talk about there. But Jose Quintana and Chris Stratton going to the Cardinals, of all teams, in interdivision trade. The Pirates get 2 prospects back, a reliever in Oviedo who has time in the majors. He's going to start out in AAA, though. And then, interestingly enough, the other prospect And DK put this out like as well. He wrote an article about this a long time ago that like the Pirates were basically like about to sign this guy and just something happened where that didn't take place. Like they flubbed up the situation essentially. But and I'm blanking on the name right now. What's his name? Malcolm Nunez. Who is a first base prospect. You hope that he can stick at first base. Really drastic splits though. He's a guy that hits really well against the lefties, specifically at home in his home ballpark, but against the righties, not nearly as well, and also not nearly as well on the road. So I don't know what I expected in a Jose Quintana deal, and adding Chris Stratton, I understand that that's not much of a sweetener. But you know that I was on board, honestly, with not even like I wanted Jose Quintana to be here for next year and maybe even another year, like a 2-year extension if it took that to get him to re-sign. So I don't love moving him to begin with, but this seems like about fair value in terms of actually trading him if that's what they were like dead set on doing. And the fact that they didn't move some of the other pieces that like Ben Gamble's still here, Kevin Newman's still here, obviously like Bednar and Reynolds weren't going anywhere. They I guess felt like they didn't. Like Ben Cherington stuck true to his word. He felt like he didn't have to move anybody specifically. Here we are.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't really know what the market for a guy like Jose Quintana was going to be, but this seems fine. A couple of guys that you hope can contribute in at least some form or fashion at the MLB level eventually. Especially whenever you signed Jose Quintana, a lot of us were talking about he's going to be the fifth starter. He's not going to be that good. He might not even make the team or the rotation. And he turns out to be a trade piece and pretty much the only trade piece, I mean, besides Daniel Vogelbach that the Pirates had. So I don't think that it's that bad of a trade. I know like you wanted to keep him. But and like seeing the package, does it change your mind at all? Like, would you still have just rather have kept him or?
Yeah, because I think that you're talking about, a guy that you hope figures it out as a reliever. He's a converted starter. So I don't know if the plan is to try to have him be a starter for the Pirates or what, because Lord knows we could use them. But if he's gonna be in the bullpen, hopefully he can figure out more than he has, at least to this point with the Cardinals. He's shown some flashes. And then with the other one, I think that you're really looking at like a true platoon player. And to me, like Quintana in what looked like it was a seller's market, at least to start out, like when you look at, I'm not comparing the situations with Luis Castillo to Jose Quintana, don't get me wrong, but you look at like that type of return. And I thought like Quintana with what he's done this year might be, the best left-handed pitcher, especially because he's left-handed pitcher on the market. And I thought that like that would warrant, a larger return than I thought. But you're right though. In going back to when we signed this guy at the beginning of the year, if you told me we're going to end up getting this package out of him at the deadline, I would have done it because I didn't think that he would warrant this type of prospect return in a trade.
Yeah. And last thing, I guess, on baseball wise is another thing of note that's not even Pirates related, but just baseball related in general. Juan Soto going to the Padres. I mean, yeah. I feel bad. Shout out to our buddy Hunter. He's a Nationals fan. Losing a bunch of guys over the last like 3 to 4 years that were key pieces to their team.
They got a World Series out of it, though. You know what I mean? Like that, they can't complain about that to Pirates fans.
That's the difference. That is the difference. That's the difference between the Nationals and the Pirates. That's the difference between the Kansas City Royals and the Pirates, is that their World Series actually panned out and ours didn't.
Also, they screwed themselves, like they've spent, right? They just screwed themselves up in the way that they've spent. Yeah. Corbin's contract, Strasburg's contract, which granted at the time, Strasburg's I didn't think would be bad. They basically like chose him over Rendon and let Rendon walk, which that seemed like it was a good idea too, because he hasn't panned out for the Angels. But, who would have known at the time that those two contracts would turn out to be as bad as they've been? But yeah, the Juan Soto getting traded.
Trading Scherzer, trading Trey Turner, Bryce Harper leaves, trading Soto. I mean, it's been a lot of bad.
That is a very different roster than the one that won the World Series, that's for sure. But yeah, I mean, now we turn our attention to the rest of the season, and you just hope like, okay, these guys weren't offloaded at the trade deadline, but we still like we're told let's get past the deadline, and we're going to see some roster reconstruction. Ben Cherington and Derek Shelton were set to meet after Tuesday's ball game, so by the time you're watching or listening to this could have already happened. But basically, that meeting is going to decide what's the path forward here, and hopefully that means no more Yoshi Tsutsugo. I understand Josh Van Meter, I'm pretty sure, has a couple hits in this game that's going on as we're talking right now, but I don't care. Obviously, that doesn't make a difference. One game, what he does. And they need to get some of these guys up back up from AAA. The Jackson Winskies of the world. I think Travis Swaggerty deserves more than the cup of coffee he's had so far. Tucapita Marcano. I understand G1 Bay's hurt right now, but him winning if he's able to get healthy, there needs to be some type of, getting back to the young kids playing for the rest of the year.
It'd get me to watch, because right now they're not getting me to watch. So.
Yeah, and speaking of the Young Bucks, in the second segment, you're going to realize, like, this is, again, breaking the fourth wall. I'm going to be wearing a different shirt, maybe even a different hat as well. Yeah, if you're watching on YouTube. And Tyler, you're not going to hear or see him at all, but I had the opportunity to sit down with Pirates prospect Mike Burrows, talk about his appearance in the Futures game, and we had a really good discussion about what's different with this regime as opposed to the one that drafted him in 2018 when Neil Huntington was still the GM. Really good conversation, really great guy. Can't wait till he's in Pittsburgh, but we'll have that for you when we come back. This is Around the 412 on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. All right, and welcome to a special edition of Around the 412. I'm Smitty. No Tyler this week. Called in some reinforcements. I got Pirates prospect Michael Burrows on with me. Mike Burrows, you guys might have seen him in the Futures game. Obviously, a rising prospect in the Pirates system. Mike, what's going on, buddy?
Nothing much, man. How's it going?
Good. All right, this is the first question I ask everybody that comes on here, regardless of the sport that they play, regardless of the league that they play in. What was the draft process like for you? Obviously, you were somebody that came out of high school, you decided to sign and forego college. But what was the whole process like for you? What was that call like? Obviously, a life-changing day.
Yeah. So I thought I might get taken on day 2. I knew day 1 I wasn't going to get taken, but I had a number in mind. I didn't have an agent, so I kind of let every team know what my number was, and gave it to them and let them know what I was willing to take to not go to school. And had like a handful of teams that were interested, and one of them was the Pirates. Was in day 2. I had to turn down a bunch of offers because they weren't the number that I was looking for, which was hard to do. I mean, 18 years old in high school and like
right.
fifth round calls, but it's not the money I'm looking for. So turned it down, and I waited, until the end of that day. Nothing happened. So me and my dad went and got dinner. Mom and sisters were at dance, and figured, all right, we're going to school. And then that night, right after dinner, I got a call from a few guys, and one of them was Eddie Charles, who's with the Pirates, and told me that they might have the money, and if I would be willing to take it in the 11th. And I said yes, and that's how it went down.
Yeah, that's just the MLB draft is so different from the other leagues in that, those overslot and underslot deals, and you go in the 11th round, get way more money than a guy doing in the 5th round. That's obviously very different from the other leagues. So you also played was it third base as well coming out of high school? Was there ever, like, were you good enough to play third base? Had you gone to college, like continued to be a two-way guy?
Yeah, I think they were going to give me the opportunity to try it out. I don't know if I, would have stuck with it or whatnot, but yeah, I played corner infield and center field. So, I was just bouncing around playing any position I could, and, just having fun. But hitting was really fun. So I was like, why not? If I could go do it in college and throw the rock, like, why not? Right. So, um, if they were going to give me that opportunity, I was going to try to make the most of it.
Yeah. And make the most of it you have. Now, has there been like a thought for you since that time, like obviously for going college, where you were like, man, maybe I should have gone to college? Has that entered your mind at all? Or no, you love the path that you've taken up to this point?
Nah, I love the path I've taken for sure. I'm very happy with where I'm at.
Okay. And like you are kind of, Mike, like you're kind of becoming a household name in terms of people that watch Pirates prospects. Like your rise up these boards have just been crazy. Obviously, you just pitched in the Futures game. But what has that rise been like for you? Like, do you feel like you're really the same guy and people are just catching on? Was there some type of mechanical change or anything that took place there?
Yeah, there were a lot of changes that happened, throughout over COVID, really. I started to find like an identity for myself, and found, what made my pitches good, and what I needed to do to make them better. And I really honed in on the fastball and the curveball, and wanted to make those two really good, and then just branch off from there and just see where I could go from there, because I was kind of tired of having a bunch of pitches that were, I didn't know they were average, but they were average, and that some of them wouldn't show up on a start day, and I'd have to ride with three of them, and it's like, well, why not just have three that will show up every day and are amazing, and fucking are great pitches, and I can really have some fun with them. So I dove in and just made three of them really good, so I could show up day to day with those pitches and be consistent and not be a different guy every time out. Where, oh yeah, like slider looks good, but curveball's a little loopy today, and no, like let's have three so I know who I am when I get on that mound and what I'm trying to do with my pitches, and not have that lack of feel for five. And
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm only going to keep going from there and keep expanding and keep you know branching off from the three pitches I have now.
Gotcha. That's really interesting. I mean, that self-awareness, not everybody has that, and the fact that you're really just owning in the arsenal that you have. Are you a bit, just while you were talking though, it kind of like made this question pop in my mind, because it's not something that I had on here originally, but are you like a big like advanced guy? Like you like the advanced stat stuff, like the spin rate, the RPM, all that stuff? Do you look at that stuff at all, or do you just kind of put that on the back burner?
I would say now in the point I'm at in the season, it's kind of on the back burner. I think execution has taken, the forefront there in what I'm trying to do. And throughout the week building up to the starts, it's really just making sure that all my pitches are where they need to be. If one of them's lacking, then there's definitely some work to be put in to get that, to get that feel back for it. Maybe it's just a cue in my head that I have to go back to, maybe I have to go back to a cue that I was using with it like a few weeks ago.
Hmm.
Because that stuff happens, it becomes very repetitive, and you kind of, start to branch away from stuff, but it's just really trying to stay locked in and like, you know, keep those pitches where they're at. And if, as long as they're where they're supposed to be, then everything just comes down to the execution part in game.
Gotcha. Is that more of an off-season thing that you look at then, or like what's your off-season regiment in general look like?
Yeah, the off season is going to be this year. I think it's going to be really just keeping these three pitches where they're at still. But I would like to start messing around with a slider and see what I can do with it. If anything, at least have some good feel for it, because I believe that I'm gonna want another pitch somewhere down the road. So if I can start to create some feel with it, now in this off season, and really get the time to work on it and not just mess around and have fun with it, like really get some video and some data on it, and really see what I'm doing right and wrong, and the kind of grips I can use with it. That's going to be the time to do all that stuff. And in season's a really tough time to do that stuff, because you don't want to go away from the stuff that you are doing really well and mess up
Yeah, that's
that.
interesting, because I was gonna ask that, like, if you have done that, if you ever thought about adding a pitch in season, because like, look at Mitch Keller, what he's doing in Pittsburgh this year. He's now stacking these quality starts, 6 straight, and it all goes back to when he started throwing that slider. I didn't know
Right.
if that was something that, obviously, though, you kind of just answered my own question there with your answer, that's something you prefer to do in the off season, and not have to try to incorporate in season. I want to go back to, obviously you're a Connecticut kid, so like the team not right there. Did you grow up a Red Sox fan, or who was your team growing up, or did you not have one?
No, it was Boston.
Okay.
I'm a Boston fan at heart. Yeah.
Okay. And so who was like your favorite player growing up? Was there a pitcher that you molded yourself after or saw a lot of yourself in at all?
Josh Beckett was one that I really loved to watch.
Mm,
Josh Beckett was one of my favorites. Pedro was too, but I felt like um, I took more away from Josh as far as like mechanics go. Like when I was young, I wanted to my arm path to be exactly like his. And Pedro, I wasn't. I was just in awe of Pedro, really. So
gotcha.
Josh Beckett's the guy I took stuff from.
Gotcha. Okay. And is there anybody like not on the Red Sox, maybe, same question there though, that you see a lot of yourself in, or took something from growing up?
Um, Not really, because they were like that team. Like all of them were my idols in like '04 going all the way
Oh,
through
yep.
13. Like those were huge years of my youth, and they won in '04, '07, and 13. So um, yeah, I mean, Beckett had one of the biggest influences on me is when I was a kid, and that's because when I see my dad watching the Red Sox, and then I become interested in the Red Sox, and then he shows me this pitcher, and it's like, oh, let's watch him tonight, and that's kind of where it started. So I wasn't like flipping channels and watching, the Detroit Tigers play or anything like that,
Well, no one is, but yeah, no,
Yeah.
I hear you. um, yeah, gosh. But okay, so like, when did you realize then that you could do this? When did you realize, okay, I could make a living out of this. I can do this at the next level.
I That's a tough question. I don't know like exactly when or even if it was like a year. I always had the passion to do it for as long as I could, per se, like didn't want to put it down until I was forced to. And,
Hmm.
then I guess towards the end of high school, I really saw that I could get into pro ball. And then once I got into pro ball, I was like, you know, not only just happy to be there, I was just trying to like learn and just get my whereabouts and my footing. And really right after COVID, I was like, you know what? Like I want to get there like now. So let's try to be really, really good and like see when we can get there. Like let's get there soon, And that's when I put in all the work, and that's when I was like, then the results started happening in 2021 and then this year. And I think just like the mental side of it's huge, and just being confident in yourself and what you can do. And then all that work just kind of, you know, is that work is just there because you've done it all, and then that
Hmm.
confidence just plays with it.
Now, obviously, you made the jump from AA to AAA, and obviously starting even lower than that. Now, every time that you've jumped up a class, like how much of a difference do you notice in terms of like the level of competition, and has there been that big of a gap each time that you move up?
um when I got into high A, I I mean I was really, I came in with really good stuff after that, after I worked on everything. And I think
Hmm.
the stuff that I brought into it played regardless of where I threw it. And it was a great opportunity for me to get some feel and try to work batters. And but I didn't have the approach that I do now. And when I got to double A, it was like, all right, let's execute these pitches. But at the same time, I was still like, I know I can get away with this. If I just throw it into this general location, with my best stuff, it's still gonna do what I need to. When I got to triple A, um, I couldn't do that. I can't get a ball past, just anybody, because they've seen everything I've brought to the table. To a degree, they've already seen it before. They're older guys. They understand at bats and what pitchers try to do to them. They know how to put the ball in play with two strikes and foul pitches off and work an at bat. And that stuff, like now it comes down to like a lot of finer things and where I'm putting the ball and what I'm doing with it, and realizing that a well executed pitch is better than my best fastball through the middle of the plate.
Hmm. No, that's what a lot of people that are pitchers that we've had on here have said too, because it's like at the AAA level, you have a lot more guys that have MLB experience too. Maybe they
Right.
haven't made obviously a career up there, but they've had at bats at the MLB level and are playing back down in AAA. So yeah, that's interesting for sure. Um, Obviously, like I said, you're in AAA now, Mike. Have you like let the thought at all enter your mind of like I'm only one step away from the major league level, or are you trying to not even think about that right now? Just focus each time that you get the ball.
Um, I would say when I was in double A, the thought of going to triple A was there, but I tried to
Hmm.
suppress it a lot. And then when I got here, I was just really happy to be here. Through my first couple starts, I got to learn a lot. Jared Eikoff's been in the league for over 5 years, and like getting to talk to him, like, yeah, of course, like I've thought about going to the big leagues my whole life, and being one step away is awesome because I see guys getting called up and brought down and back up and all that. But really just getting to have those conversations with the guys around me, the guys who have been there, and it my head is in learning what I can do to be my best, so that when I get up there, I'm fully ready and ready to start taking on, obviously regular big leaguers and then those superstars. So I don't think that the level is too far away, but I think that's going to be the biggest jump, is just figuring out how to stay there when I get there.
Gotcha. And this might be again, this has just popped in my mind. This wasn't something I had on here originally, but like I don't know if you have obviously friends on other teams or anything like that, but being that you're with the Pirates and a team that focuses more and needs more from their prospects, a lot more homegrown guys are going to play in the big club. Because, like, say you're coming up through the Yankee system, good chance if you're a top prospect there, you're going to be moved for a major league talent at a deadline or something like that. But with the Pirates that focus more on the prospects, like, what's your mindset there, knowing that you're probably going to contribute at the big league level for the team that drafted you, at least initially?
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting. Like from the get-go, all I've thought about is like, okay, like trying to get to Pittsburgh. It wasn't, um, and the thought wasn't to play anywhere else. And the thought still isn't to play anywhere else. I'd love to play in that city, and I'm truly excited to get there and to play there. So, um, I don't know. I don't know if I have like too many. I mean, I had one friend that was with the Dodgers, and he had a tough time for a little bit with them. Now he's with the Athletics. But I
Mm-hmm.
mean, um,
Yeah, I've
I
just
don't. It's
always
hard to
wondered
compare
that.
if I haven't been in the
Right,
organization.
absolutely. That's
Yeah.
like so Jared Oliva, that's one of our guys too. Like he has a good friend that's with the Orioles, and he would always just talk about like the similarities for their, situations as opposed to they have a friend that's in the Yankee system and has already been moved a couple times. So, yeah, it's just I didn't know if you had, friends in other systems to try to compare that to or whatever. But sticking with you specifically with what's going on in your situation, I obviously got to talk about the futures game experience. I mean, that had to be something that maybe you didn't like think would happen or dream of happening, but what was that whole experience like that weekend?
I mean, exactly what you said. Like I'd never dreamed of going to that game or even had it on my mind this year, but to get that opportunity and to get the invitation and to be recognized for it was a very, very cool opportunity for sure. It was a lot of fun. I mean, LA was cool. I hadn't been to LA. I've been to San Diego. Weather
Okay.
was great. I mean, it was cool for sure.
Now you
Dodger
actually got
Stadium was
to
awesome.
like pitch in the game as well. Oh, that's what I was going to say. Pitch in the game at Dodger Stadium, taking the big league mound. So you've had a little bit of a taste already of a big league stadium. Like that day when you take the ball on the mound, just I don't know if you can describe the experience, but best as possible. What was that like?
Um, it was. I mean, it was really cool. I played in um, the Rogers Center too in Toronto. I played in Fenway
Okay.
in
Yep.
high school, but to actually get some like a real crowd back there too in Dodger Stadium. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the camera like watching a game there doesn't do justice to that place. That place is just absolutely stunning. It's a very cool ballpark. Like, but at the end of the day, like when I get up there and all I see is the 60 feet in front of me, to that catcher. So
Mm-hmm.
really doesn't make a difference where it is. It's just like when you're in that park and you're warming up, like you actually get the time to look at things. But the second you know that you're going into that game, you just got tunnel vision. You get on that mountain, it's like you're anywhere else. So
It's a cool ballpark, but it's still not PNC Park. What did you know about Pittsburgh when you got drafted? And obviously, you got to visit Pittsburgh when you signed and everything, I assume. But what do you know about the city and stuff like that?
I wouldn't say I'm an expert on the city, but I love the I did get just when I got drafted, I got the chance to go there. But there's like a big like circle or like a roundabout where cars like go through, and there's like a bunch of like little restaurants and places to eat and like a couple shops. And I thought that was like a really cool part about just like outside of the view from the ballpark and everything else. I thought that was really cool. Got to go into like a little small business pizza shop that was really nice, and went to a Penguins game, and that was fun. So I mean, I
There you
think
go.
the city's very cool. I like cities like that aren't super touristy, but have like just like all the people that live there are there, and it's not like a high population of tourists and kind of like New York City, and it just seems very real and very homey in a way, which is an awesome feeling.
So you think it's a good fit in terms of the city for you as well, and obviously love their sports teams. It's about that's what we write home about. So um,
Yeah.
the last thing I think that I have for you, I think this is the last thing. You obviously were drafted by a different regime than is in Pittsburgh right now. What type of difference have you seen at the minor league level take place under the new regime? Has there really been like a ton of turnover, a ton of change, or like what have you seen?
Um, I mean, there was a lot of change at the top for sure. I mean, it
Hmm.
started at the top, but the guys that are, still there, the pitching coaches, the hitting coaches, all the guys that were already there that were in the minor league system before the change came over. Those guys are still here because they were great. They are great coaches. They're good coaches. And, you know, the stuff that we're doing now, the only difference is that players have more of a say. And that started at the top. That started with what the guys said from the top. So bringing in those new guys at the top allowed them to really work with players more and not have to be so firm on maybe one thing over another. And, you know, you'd actually be able to have that conversation with your players. You know, what do you think? Like, what's your idea? Like, here's all the information, here's all the data, here's everything laid out in front of you. What do you think? Let's have a conversation about it, you know, and we're going to find what's going to be best for you and what's going to make you feel confident. You know, what are you going to be more confident in doing? And there's just, you feel like you have control over your career, which is really cool. And nobody's taking control of it for you in a way. So what they're doing is amazing. I mean, I have zero experience in any other organizations, but I do have stories from other organizations. And I know there's guys that, you know, don't like the way that you know, things are going in their organizations, but I know that we have a choice here, and the choice is, you know, up to you on what you want to do and what you don't want to do. What, you know, and like, we're all grown men. We're grown enough to know that if we, you know, if we don't do something, maybe, you know, that could hurt us if we're not going to put in the work. So we don't, you know, guys don't need, you know, someone on top of them all the time to do their stuff. They're still doing their stuff, you know, and like, you just have those conversations about what you need to do. Talk to your trainers, your nutritionists, your coaches, and there's so many different aspects aside from just what I do on the mound that help me. And there's, you know, just millions of conversations to be had and endless, you know, resources to knowledge in the organization. And that's the best part about it, for sure, is just having all those resources of knowledge and being able to access them and have those conversations and not just feel like you're being told what to do. And then, you know, go do this. And, you know, when we do your bullpen today, this is what you're going to do, instead of, hey, what are we going to do in your bullpen? And you kind of guide the conversation and what you're going to do. And they, you know, put their sources of, you know, or their reasons for, you know, maybe you should do this today, or you talk about it. You know, it's awesome. Like, there's nothing better than that. You know, it's just, you feel like you have control of your career. You have all these resources of knowledge. You feel like you have a lot of, you know, great relationships because there's no animosity among that when you just have, you know, quality conversations about where your career's at and what you want to do with it and where you're going.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you're really happy here, and the philosophy from the top has seemed to be about creating a more player-centric organization, and it definitely sounds like you buy into that. Obviously, you're not a spokesperson for the team or anything like that, but Pirate
Right.
fans obviously at the major league level have just been, they're chomping at the bit for results. You know, at least in my lifetime, I've seen 3 playoff appearances, only 4 winning teams. I mean, what would you say to somebody that's like asking where the results are? How close do you feel like this organization is to seeing those results at the major league level?
I mean, I personally can't say. I mean, I would love to say that I'm going to be a big reason for a change or a big reason for us going to playoffs. And, you know, at the end of the day, you got to trust it. I mean, it's only been a few years since, you know, Charrington came in, and there is still work to be done. There's things to do. There's a lot of business aspects in baseball, unfortunately, that have to almost be followed, like, especially when, you know, I don't even know, like, we are a very small market team, right? So it's
Yeah.
hard to call all these guys up and keep them in there this year for a full year, full well knowing that they could be Super 2 guys, and then you're going to have to pay them a lot sooner, which is a lot more money, and that's the fact of it. That's why, you know, I think that, you know, we have to keep a revolving door for a little bit here until we start figuring some things out, and it's going to take the rest of this year and it's going to go into next year. But I think that it's going to, you know, things are going to start to solidify themselves by the time we get to this point next year. And you know, that's my hope, and I think that's what I see, but never know. You know, so many things can happen, and I think, you can't just put a whole team of prospects out there. It's not going to happen. You need to have
No,
guys
yeah.
with experience in the big leagues. You need to have,
Mhm.
Brian Reynolds. You need to have David Bednar. You need to have guys that are younger, have done it, and then you need to also have guys that have been there for years, who know their stuff, and can also, guide guys like myself, and guys like Bly Madris, and guys like O'Neal Cruz, and guys like, even Cabrian. Cabrian's still young, and he can't be the guy who's leading guys only 2 years younger than him. That's a lot of pressure to put on him too. So I don't know what the answer is, but I know that it's not going to last forever. So
No,
I'm
I
definitely
didn't mean to
excited.
back you into a corner. I think that was a really good answer, honestly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that everybody knows the amount of talent that is right now in the minor leagues, and I think that they also know that it's going to require some patience for it to all come together at the major league level. Mike, I don't have
100%.
anything else for you, man. I really appreciate your time. Big shout out to Paul as well for helping us put this together. I'm sorry my co-host Tyler couldn't join us, but I know that he's a big fan of yours as well, and we can't wait to see you in Pittsburgh. But until then, this has been Around the 412. I'm Smitty. That's Mike Burrows, who you're going to see in Pittsburgh sooner rather than later. We'll talk to you guys next time. Bye-bye. And welcome back to Around the 412 on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. That was a great conversation with Mike Burrows. Like I said, can't wait till he is in Pittsburgh, really dominating down there in the minor leagues. I don't even know. Obviously, you didn't have the opportunity to talk to him yet. Hopefully, we can get it back on to do so. But like a year and a half ago, I had no clue who this guy was. His rise in the system has just been crazy.
Yeah, I had no clue. Even when his name was brought up a few months ago, I had no clue who he was. And
yeah, I mean,
yeah,
I know. Shout out to the Pirates fan forum. Like, of course, they're going to be more in tune with the minor league system and everything with the Pirates in general.
dude, they
But
already
I
know who the
remember,
Pirates are drafting in 2028. Like we have no idea.
Was it the show that they were on with us though, where I asked them like if they felt like there was enough pitching for like the window of contention, and Gary immediately said Mike Burrows.
Yeah,
like, that was his
yeah,
guy.
that was our
okay.
that was our like Pirates preview episode. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We'll talk about previews. Man, Steelers season, as we get through training camp, they finally threw on the pads. Football, Hall of Fame game now. It's not the Steelers. Hall of Fame game's 48 hours from basically right now when we're recording. Yeah, this is, like I said, when they throw on the pads, it gets real. You start to find out some real things. Like last week, football in shorts, what can you really say? They're just kind of going through the motions. Now these battles are really going to start, like the real one at left guard between Kevin Dotson and Kendrick Green. That's to be a fun one to monitor. I guess we can kind of call it a quarterback battle, but like from all instances, like Mitch Trubisky's going to have to be terrible to lose that quarterback job. So I don't even know how much time we want to spend on this because it's such low hanging fruit. It's such an easy topic to discuss, and everybody, and I mean everybody, is writing and talking about it every single day at training camp.
What more is there to say, honestly? Until they decide a starter, I'm going to think that Mitch will end up being the starter. And then like that's no slide to the other two. I mean, and I've heard that Mason has looked pretty good from everything.
And I thought
I've
Kenny
seen,
was
but,
decent today.
Yeah, but I just think that until it's told otherwise that he's not the starter, I just think it's a non-story. I think Mitch is going to start out the season as the starter. I mean, honestly, I'm more interested in that left guard battle than I am at the quarterback battle, to be honest. And apparently Kendrick Green didn't even like playing center, which he said like last week, which is funny to me.
Yeah, I mean, you typically wouldn't hear guys say that.
Yeah, the whole draft process, he was being drafted as a center. You'd think it's kind of like a Connor Sherry with his last name situation. It's like he wouldn't speak up and say like, oh, I don't want to play center. Like I don't like the position. And I get it if that's where you're going to get drafted and that's where you have the best possible situation to be drafted like that. But still, I mean, even in college, he didn't really play center that much. He played guard. So it makes more sense that he didn't like playing center. And especially based off his play at center last year, I think it makes sense that he likes playing guard better. Yeah,
while he was being interviewed and talked about like that, he was probably saying, oh, I'm open to playing anywhere. You don't want to tank your own draft stock by saying I'm not willing to play this position.
Right.
But I think that there was enough on tape to probably say if you're drafting this guy, let's just keep him at guard. He was pretty successful at doing that. What's interesting to me, man, is I really think that they could both be quality guards. So, like, I'm excited to see which one wins that battle because it's truly going to be the best man wins. And there's not like that right spot is open. Our best offensive lineman is playing right guard right now, our most proven offensive lineman in James Daniels. So it's kind of what we talked about. Mason Cole was pretty much cemented at center. We know our two tackles. There's that one spot at left guard. And it's been really interesting to see them, like, when they're doing these drills, literally 6 offensive linemen, like they're both standing in that left guard spot, basically. So, yeah, I'm enjoying it. I know it's very early in the process still, but I'm excited to see it play out. And I think that they both, like, right now, I truly think it's a coin toss, 50-50. But moving on a little bit, talking about some other stuff, a guy that has really, like, stuck out to me in terms of just how many reps he's getting is Robert Spelaine, because I think that most people went into the season or went into this training camp thinking Robert Spillaine's back to his normal LB3 role. And you're going to see a lot of Devin Bush and a lot of Miles Jack. Robert Spelaine has taken a lot of snaps in place of both of them. It's like a rotating door there between those three, which two are going to be on the field. And it makes sense because Robert Spelaine is a guy that you probably want on the field in like obvious run situations and not on the field in obvious pass situations. Yep. But I really truthfully think that this guy's carving out a role for himself more than we would have thought going into training camp. We're seeing a lot more of him than I think that people anticipated. I think that a lot of people thought this guy's going to go back to his special teams role and we'll see him sparingly unless like Devin Bush stinks again.
I mean, I'll be honest. When you look at the middle linebacker depth, I mean, you have Marcus Allen, you've got Ulysses Gilbert, Buddy Johnston. I don't think that there's a lot of guys competing for at least the linebacker 3 spot behind Robert Spillane. And when it comes to linebacker play in general, I don't think that the linebackers play from Devin Bush last year and then Miles Jack last year on the Jaguars. I don't think that really warranted to just be automatic starters either. And I think that Robert Spillane can definitely contribute in ways that we saw in like the 2020 season. Was it the 2020 season? When was this? When was the Derrick Henry tackle? That was the 2020 season.
Yeah, I know they all run together, but that was 2020. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, from that tackle on, that was kind of like the decline of Robert Spillane that we saw. And but like up until that point, I thought he was a pretty serviceable linebacker. And so if we get that play from him, and like you said, in run situations, he's a pretty good linebacker. And I think that you have the flexibility to put him out there in those situations and then have Miles Jack and Devin Bush on the field at the same time for passing situations. I think that you can mix and match those linebackers to put yourself in the best situation depending on what you think the offense is going to run. But honestly, besides the what are considered, I guess, the incumbent starters of Miles Jack and Devin Bush, I don't really think there's a lot behind Robert Spillane, but instead of those two in front, that is really going to be pushing to go in front of Robert Spillane on the depth chart. I feel like it's kind of more so expected that he should take this progression and do better and get some more run because, honestly, there's only 2 linebackers that I would put in front of him.
Yeah, I think that you would love to see like a Buddy Johnson take a step. They invested a decent draft pick in him last year, and you obviously want him to go from being like a special teams contributor into that like next level progression.
Yeah, and that's not to say that they can't. Like that's just me looking at the depth chart as it is right now too.
Yeah, UG3, this isn't biased. I'm going based off what I've seen from other people, was considered one of the big winners of today. Had a really nice practice on Tuesday in coverage, blowing plays up, kind of was doing it all around the field. And if he can get back to like that athlete that he was supposed to be coming out of college and those back issues are behind him, he's a guy, again, that also can push for some playing time, and maybe he would be the one that can push for that LB3 role, if anybody. Now, I see some bad news, some bad writing on the wall here for Marcus Allen. Because right now he's not able to practice, which like availability we know is a huge thing for Mike Tomlin. Also, he's a special teams contributor. Like if he's going to make this team, it's going to be because of what he does on special teams. He is no longer, even when he was practicing, he was no longer running with the number 1 kick unit. Trey Norwood has taken his spot as the number 1 up back. So that is not good news. And that was before, obviously, they put on the pads and stuff. But if when Marcus Allen comes back, that is still the case, that's something to monitor. And shout out to Alex Kazor, who's with Steelers Depot, for throwing that out there. Got to give him the cap tip for noticing that. He does the notes every single day of practice. Very thorough. So shout out to him. But the other thing that I think that we like have to talk about, because it's just going to linger over the team for as long as this goes on, is the Deonte Johnson situation. I think everybody knows where I stand personally on the Deonte Johnson situation. His agent is at camp right now, by the way, or he was yesterday. We'll see if he's there tomorrow. I am so confused, I guess, by the discourse about this guy. Like, I don't know what people aren't seeing. Like, I respect everybody's opinion. It's just hard for me to fathom that I'm watching something completely different. Like, do people not realize that this guy hasn't even been able to unlock all of his route tree because of the quarterback play that we've had since he came into the league? Not just last year, but literally all 3 of the seasons that he's played in the NFL, he's been hampered by that. Like, his middle route tree and his deep route tree have been non-existent. He can't do anything with the separation that he can create down the field, which is probably one of the strongest parts, if not the strongest part of his game. I understand. Yeah, it all goes back to the drop issues that he had in 2020, man. But like, if you look at the league leaders in drops, they're typically guys. If you want to if you're more of a hockey person, want to relate to that, look at the top turnover guys in the NHL. Pretty good players, pretty good receivers are going to lead the league in drops because they're getting the ball thrown to them more. Now that wasn't the issue entirely in 2020. Like, those were legit drops. The dude had 5 last year, and they all came within like a 3-week stretch. I understand he didn't finish the season as strong. The Steelers' offense didn't finish the season as strong. The Steelers' offense didn't have a season last year. So they basically did nothing, and he was the only pulse on that offense. And we're talking about, like, I understand. It's not like I'm writing this guy a blank check and saying he's worth whatever, give him whatever. But I do think that it's wrong to say that he can't get $20+ million because whether it's the Steelers that give it to him or somebody else, he can get that on the open market if he were a free agent right now.
I just look at some of the wide receivers that have got $20 million contracts, like $20 million a year. Christian Kirk is in that. Kenny Golladay is in that. You're telling me that Deontay Johnson isn't as good, or if not better, than those 2 guys? I know there was a couple more the last time I checked on it, but
there's currently 11 receivers making $20 million right now.
Yeah, and I look at the guys that have made that around that number, and you can't convince me that Deontay Johnson doesn't belong. I don't see a reason why you wouldn't pay him. And as far as it goes, when it's like the Steelers and Deontay Johnson are far apart, listen, we just went through a lot of crap with the Penguins in terms of contracts. I don't really know who to believe and what to believe whenever I see it. It was the same thing with that. I'm taking everything with a grain of salt like I did with that and doing it with this Deontay Johnson talk. I want him here for a long time. I think he's a really good receiver. He's really dynamic and a receiver that we haven't really had, since Antonio Brown left, honestly, in terms of the route running and everything. I'm not saying he's Antonio Brown. Don't put more into my mouth. I'm just saying, in terms of some of the skill set he brings, like Juju didn't do that. Juju was not that type of receiver. Deontay Johnson's a different type of receiver, and I think that he is valuable to the team. He's the clear-cut number 1 right now, and they need this guy moving forward because, as far as it goes, like year after year, it's like we lost Antonio Brown. Now we lost Juju, and it's like the wide receivers, like as long as the Steelers are good at drafting them, I guess you can keep replenishing it, but I feel like you got to miss eventually on a receiver. So hopefully they don't have to do that moving forward, but I just want him around because I think that he is so valuable to this offense. You can build the offense around guys like him and Najee.
Yeah, right now you're not paying anybody on offense. Like, I understand that it's the most expensive defense, but no one on offense is making any money right now. And that's why, to me, like, if you've paid attention to these other receiver contracts, especially from this 2019 class, like specifically like Terry McLaurin, DK Metcalf, and Deebo Samuel, not A.J. Brown, because A.J. Brown got a 4th year, but those other 3, they signed 3-year contracts. Is that not the perfect situation for both teams? Now, obviously, the money would have to make sense, and I'm a little bit skeptical that they can get to a point where it does for both sides, to be honest with you. I'm a little bit more optimistic with his agent being at camp, and that could mean nothing. Also, the reports that, Jerry Dulac, Khan himself said we're talking to his camp. I don't know that was the case before. I think that they finally have started talking when they weren't before, but I'm getting off track here now. Anyway, 3 years to me is the sweet spot because at that point, then you're going to have to start paying some guys on offense and you make that decision. Like, okay, if Pickens is the truth, which it looks like people are falling in love with this guy already. He's the shiny new toy. I love what I'm seeing too, but I think we need to pump the brakes a little bit. But say he is that guy. In 3 years, when Deontay Johnson's a free agent, let him hit free agency again before he turns 30. That's great for him, and you pay Pickens. Or Najee's going to need a new contract at that time. Is Kenny Pickett looking like a franchise quarterback? Do we have to pay him? Like, you can reevaluate.
Giving a running back a new contract? Are you kidding me?
I'm just saying. Hey, they were willing to do it with Le'Veon. He just didn't take it. Do I want them to do it? That will be a different conversation, but I'm not rolling out the Steelers doing it. But I just think 3 years is that sweet spot. And for anybody, this would be such an indictment too. Say they do get a contract done with Diontae, right? And people are like, oh, why would they do that? They can, scout talent so well at receiver position. Wouldn't that even be more of an indictment as to how they feel about Deonte Johnson? If they know, right, that they can go into the draft and find receivers that can plug and play right away, they're so good at doing it, but still decide that this guy's worth paying this much money to because we like him that much, would that not be an indictment of that's how they feel about Deonte Johnson?
I think it would. I think that we would say, like, we like this guy so much that we're not even going to use our mega skill of finding wide receiver talent because we're better than the entire league at receiver and paying this guy. I mean, because there's no guarantee. Like, you can find a serviceable and good wide receiver. There's no guarantee you're finding Deonte Johnson, though.
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, that's like with this receiver class, there was a ton of guys that I liked as like number 2 and 3 options for offenses. But we're talking about, in my mind, I understand opinions can be different, a guy that's a top 12 to 15 receiver in the league. And that was with, again, not being able to utilize his entire route tree and his skill set. I'm really curious as to what he can still tap into, in a different offense with a different quarterback. And not even saying that one of these guys is that guy. I don't know. But, I'd love to find out. I'd love for Diontae to stick around for 3 more years and find out. Again, at times, the only pulse that this offense had, especially in the passing game. I understand, like, Najee Harris did his best to provide some type of a running game last year.
Offensive line, I mean, come on.
Yeah. But sticking with the receivers, I want to ask you this because that might be another battle, is who's going to win, depending on how many receivers they keep. Like, we know they're going to keep at least 5. Will they keep a 6th? Is somebody going to push them for 6th? But you have Diontae, Chase Claypool out right now dealing with a little bit of a shoulder injury, but doesn't sound too serious. George Pickens, who they expect to contribute immediately. Calvin Austin III, who's been lighting it up, showing his speed. He's one of the fastest players already in the NFL, and they're using him. Maybe we're actually going to see Matt Canada's offense this year. So there's 4 right there. They brought in Gunner to be, mainly special teams player, but he's listed as a wide receiver. He might run some routes. I don't want to say that this name and everybody be turned off by it, but maybe like in a Ryan Switzer type role, or like what we'd hope that would look like. So say they keep
everyone just stop listening.
Yeah, everyone just stop listening right now. Who is that other guy? They brought in Miles Boykin from Baltimore, but like Anthony Miller's been like one of the camp standouts to this point. You have Tyler Vaughns from USC, who's another guy that's looked really impressive at times. And then on like the lower end of that, you have like a Tyler Snead, Steven Sims, who appears to just be a camp body. I hate to, slander somebody in that way and say that he doesn't have a chance to make the team, but he's probably playing to be on another roster somewhere else. So how does this shake out?
Okay, I'll answer this question in 2 different ways. I'll answer it the first way, where you kind of alluded to keeping Gunner on the team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if I'm only keeping one other receiver, I think it really comes down to what the Steelers are looking for in a receiver. I think if they want another big-bodied type of receiver, then I think Miles Boykin is your answer. Chase Claypool, really the only
I know White.
Cody White is also there. Yeah. I just feel like he's destined to be a practice squad guy forever, honestly. I shout out to him. I like him, but I just feel like that's where he's been. That's where he's going to be. But as far as like big body receivers, Chase Claypool is kind of what the Steelers have right now. And I know George Pickens is a little bit bigger as well. I mean, he's bigger than some of their receivers. But I mean, in terms of being like 6'4", I feel like Miles Boykin is another guy that can fill that role as a larger bodied receiver. But if they're not worried about that as much, then I like Anthony Miller. I thought he was an intriguing last year when he came over. He was with Chicago for a little bit. And I think that I would keep him. But in the second way I'm going to answer that question, I wouldn't keep Gunner, and I would keep those 2. I would keep Miles Boykin, and I would keep Anthony Miller. And the reasoning is because I don't want to have a wide receiver spot like we did with Ryan Switzer. And no hate to Ryan Switzer. I respect him a lot, but I do not want to fill a wide receiver spot just to have a return guy. And that's basically all the value he has, even though Ryan Switzer didn't have a lot of value as a return guy when he played for the Steelers. I think that if you wanted to do that and use a wide receiver as a return guy, you could have Calvin Austin try it out, or somebody else.
Or Anthony Miller,
Or Anthony Miller. I don't want to use up that spot to just have a return guy if he's not going to do offensive production as well. So in my opinion, and that's what I personally would do, is I would cut Gunner out of the situation and I would keep Boykin and Miller. And that would be my 6 wide receiver core along with Austin, Claypool, Pickens, and Deontay Johnson.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's what I was going to say. Like, that's the wrench that could be thrown in here is if Calvin Austin or Anthony Miller end up looking better as the return guys in training camp, that could spell the end for Gunner. I know that they brought him in. I was pretty excited for it. I mean, this was a guy that was an all-pro returner just, the year before last for the Patriots. Seemed really excited to come over here. And I don't want to say it was like a prize free agent or anything like that, but like he had his own press conference and everything like that. Like it seemed like it was relatively hyped up for just a guy that was a special teams guy. And he has run routes. Obviously, they didn't utilize him necessarily that way in New England. Maybe it would be different in Matt Canada's offense here. But you're saying this is like what you would want to have happen, right? Not necessarily the direction the team
That's
goes.
what I would want to have happen. Now, as far as what I think will happen, I feel like Gunner's going to be on the team just because of, partially the hype around signing him, and they were looking for that specific like returner specialist. And I guess you're getting that in that player. It's just, I personally hate the idea of just taking up a roster spot for someone that is just a returner. Like I get it. Like you want to be good at that position, but I feel like you have other wide receivers that can give you production on the offensive side of the ball as well on special teams. But what I think will happen is probably that Gunner ends up being on the thing. I do think they carry 6 wide receivers. I feel like that's what they're going to do. I don't think they can afford to carry just 5 if Gunner's going to be one of them. And then to me, it's a toss up between Boykin and Miller at that point. And it's really just what the Steelers are looking for.
And that's so interesting because it's like Anthony Miller has the repertoire with Trubisky going back to Chicago, but Miles Boykin got a decent bit of, because he was claimed from the Ravens, so he's still making the salary that he would have there. And also like the special teams value he brings, he's a really good blocker. Like that just seems to be the Mike Tomlin mold of what he wants in a receiver. Like Mike Tomlin probably loves this guy, I'm sure, but he's also hyped up Anthony Miller. It's going to be another one of those things. Like I'm not comparing it because we're talking about a starting position at left guard that's up for grabs, but that's going to be also very interesting to watch. And those are, to me, I think I said this last year too, and it's didn't hold as true as I think it will this year, just because of also like Kenny Pickett going to be playing during the preseason. But I'm actually like looking forward to these 3 preseason games because I think that there's a lot more to watch. Like with all the roster turnover we have and everything, like there should actually be some storylines to watch in the preseason and not just, can we just get through this and get to the regular season?
Yeah, I think so as well. I mean, not only just like you mentioned the guard position, but like these receivers. And I think that you could see, and not just like the starters wise, but like I want to see some like these depth guys show that they can also play, because I mean that's a big thing on the defensive side of the ball specifically that we're kind of worried about at multiple positions, is the depth behind the starters. Seeing that they can actually play and perform on the field during game day will make me feel a lot more comfortable moving into the season than I do right now as far as depth goes.
Yeah. The next time that we're on here talking, we're going to have a lot more to talk about because another full week of pads will have gone by that point. So obviously excited for that. We'll see how some of these battles have kind of shaken up to that point. Is Pickett still going to be taking most of the QB2 reps? Is anybody else going to take any QB1 reps? Not sure, but we'll find out. Other than that, for Tyler, for Smitty, go look at our pin tweet on Twitter. Go to the GoFundMe, type in around the 412. You can read the whole mission. Donate if you can. It's our favorite thing that we do. That'll be running up until probably like 2 weeks before Christmas, rocking around the 412. Also, we're trying to give away Steelers tickets. So when we get to 17,000 followers on Twitter, we will be doing that. If you're not on Twitter, make an account right now. Follow us and retweet that tweet. If you're listening to us anywhere besides you, if you're on YouTube, like and subscribe. If you're listening to us anywhere else, like, subscribe, 5-star review, all that stuff. We'll say it every week until every single one of you are doing so. So literally right now, stop what you're doing, pause. All right, you should have done it by now. All right, until next week, for Tyler, for Smitty, this is Around the 412 on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network, and we'll talk to you guys then. Bye-bye.